Hey guys, Matt back with another video. This one an update to my previous BlackBerry video that I made about a month ago. Now, BlackBerry has been rising quite a bit over the last, I want to say week, maybe over a week a bit. The news around GameStop has been kind of overshadowing many other stocks, but BlackBerry has been doing pretty well. And a lot of people are wondering why, and they're wondering whether they should hop on this train to Tendy Town. However, I'm here to explain my position on BlackBerry, explain why I am bullish on BlackBerry. However, I am also going to dampen some of the crazy hype around it. And if you want to skip along the video, you can click on any of the chapters to get to the more juicier information, or just jump to the parts that stick out to you. However, I do have a bullish sentiment around this stock, so I want to make sure that everybody understands that I am carrying shares, I am carrying calls to 2023, and there's a reason why I have 2023 calls and not, weeklies for next Friday for this stock being at $50. But I will explain all of that as we go on. So jumping over here to a Wall Street Bets post by Man Flu is damn real. I don't necessarily want to go too much into the post. I just want to point out that there are a lot of posts on Wall Street Bets if you're going through Reddit and looking at these posts. And they go into the many different things that BlackBerry is doing and what is making it kind of pop up on everybody's radar. I want to go a little bit deeper and explain what a lot of these people aren't talking about on Wall Street Bets, and make sure that you guys have the best information that you can possibly have to make the best decision for your portfolio. So with that, these posts go into many different things, and one of the main ones being QNX software. BlackBerry has something called QNX software, which is installed in over 175 million different vehicles across the world. It gives them a lot of data points. It provides them all kinds of data for every which kind of sensor that goes on the vehicles that this is made in. I go way into depth on this in my previous video on BlackBerry, and if you want to catch that and see the deep dive on QNX, you can click up here. However, I'm not going to go that much into depth on QNX. I just want you to have a rough understanding that QNX is more or less the stronghold right now of BlackBerry ever since it transitioned from a hardware company and peaked at like $140 something a share back in like 2007, 2008 timeframe, and then has steadily been declining as they fail to go to touchscreen phones and keep up with Apple and Android. Since then, there's been this transition into becoming a software company and not being a hardware company anymore. Their revenue in hardware from like earphones and all kinds of other different things is less than 1%, way less than 1% of what their revenue is. So this is by no means a hardware company anymore. This is 100% a software company and a patent company. So going back to QNX, very roughly speaking, software that is installed in vehicles that manages data from all the different sensors. And there was a partnership announced with Amazon earlier last year that has a lot of speculation around it with how it's going to tie into autonomous driving for these other vehicle manufacturers in order to catch up to Tesla eventually, because Tesla is currently pulling from a little over 1 million vehicles worldwide that they've already produced. And eventually, once this catches up and is able to use the robust horsepower of Amazon's AWS system, Amazon's web services, they will basically, the plan a lot of people anticipate is to catch up with a tremendous amount of more data than Tesla could ever hope to pool, and to be able to implement autonomous driving in several other vehicle makers to make sure that they are also at the forefront along with Tesla. So that is one of the big pulls of QNX. However, they are getting a lot of revenue currently from QNX being implemented as the operating system for vehicle manufacturers, not all, but for many of the vehicle manufacturers. So going past QNX, I want to jump really quick into their financials. There is a reason why BlackBerry is trading very, very cheap. I ended up buying in initially a month ago when it was at the time at highs of over $8. As it steadily bled away all the way to like $6.70, I was hurting because I had lost 25% of what I put in BlackBerry. However, I knew that this was a long hold. I state that in my last video. This is you buy this stock and you completely forget it. And that is what I feel that most people right now looking at BlackBerry aren't understanding. This is not a short-term hold. This is not something that this last week where we've seen, 20, 25, 30% increases intraday. This is not normal. And honestly, there is no reason for this to be happening with BlackBerry right now. BlackBerry is in a transitionary state. Even though they've been done and over with hardware for a long time, they have flown under the radar and they've been making a lot of moves with software and what they're doing with their patents and all the different products that they're coming out with, and they're positioning themselves to get lots of different contracts and put themselves in a place where they can generate a ton of profit. However, looking at these financials, you wouldn't be able to tell that unless you knew the story and you understood what was going on. And that's because when you look at these financials, they don't look good. They don't look good at all. Their revenue has been declining. Their research and development cost has been going down. Their marketing cost has been going down. Marketing, I just want to point out, this is one of the reasons why their competition in one of the products they provide, which is their cyber suite, which I'll get a little more into afterwards. But their cyber suite is struggling against companies like CrowdStrike because CrowdStrike spends a ton on R&D. I believe they just passed BlackBerry and how much they spend on R&D. And CrowdStrike is spending a ton on marketing. CrowdStrike's actually still in the negative on their sheets. However, their revenue has grown. I think it's on track for 100% year over year. From 2020 compared to what they did in 2019. And a lot of that is just due to the massive amount of marketing that they're doing to get a lot of the contracts that CrowdStrike is getting. However, this is not a CrowdStrike video. Just want to touch on one of the competitors and how that ties into the selling, marketing, and administration costs here that we see on their revenue sheet. So you can actually also see that when we go through all the way down to the bottom, that their loss per share is increasing year over year from 2019 to 2020. They don't look very great on paper. However, something that's been keeping them afloat is the fact that they have an insane amount of patents and they're able to generate a ton of money to keep their balance sheet afloat from what they rake in from licensing and from selling patents. Again, we'll get into that later. However, I just want to make sure that everybody out there understands that when you're investing in BlackBerry, you're not investing in a hypey stock that's going to take off overnight. It is a stock that is a long-term hold. They are in a transitionary period, and this is something that probably has a 2 to 3 year horizon with a steady rise as people start seeing what's happening. Because of course, for all we know, the CEO, John Chen, he might shit the bed and maybe he makes a bunch of bad calls and this whole transitionary period goes to crap. But there's a lot of people that believe that's not going to be the case. But the thing is, you're not going to see this stock trade at the PE multiple that everybody else is in the space, their competitors. They all trade around an average of a 7 multiple forward PE multiple. And BlackBerry trades at about 4 times. CrowdStrike's at like a crazy 35 times. But again, not a CrowdStrike video. I just want to go into why it's trading at such a low multiple compared to everybody else. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that because they make money from licensing and selling patents, which is seen as a one-time revenue income, if you will, it's not recurring. It is valued less than if they had a recurring contract for some of the products that they offer. Now, they do have a lot of those. However, like I said, they are keeping themselves afloat financially by leveraging their licensing, their patents that they sell. So that's just a brief explanation, and I'm oversimplifying a lot of this, but mainly it's because there's just so much to cover that hopefully I can keep this video short enough to where you guys get the gist and decide whether or not you want to invest in BlackBerry. So going past their financial sheet here, I just want to go into some of the highlights that they talked about from their last earnings report which was in Q3 2020. They go by fiscal years, so if you're looking for this online, it's actually going to be fiscal year 2021 Q3. But jumping into the first line item, AWS and BlackBerry join forces to accelerate innovation with new intelligent vehicle data platform, BlackBerry Ivy. This is what's getting a lot of hype. This is what I talked about a month ago in that video that I made previously. This is something that deserves to get attention, and I'm glad I made that video, and I'm glad that other people are talking about it. But one key thing that people aren't mentioning is that they are not going to see revenues and profits from BlackBerry Ivy probably until mid 2022. And that's because even though this is something that is more or less being implemented with several different automakers, and a lot of people are signing on and they want this smart operating system, if you will, not operating system, the QNX is the operating system, but BlackBerry Ivy is kind of, imagine like to really oversimplify this, an app on your car that can, detect that you have a dog in the car, and it'll lower your window slightly and turn on the AC, or maybe you have a baby and it can detect that, and if people walk out of the car, it'll turn the car on and keep the AC on, right? And keep some catastrophe from happening. It can sense these things. It more or less turns your car into a smart car. It more or less turns your car into what Tesla has been doing with their vehicles. And so BlackBerry Ivy is something that is incredibly forward thinking for some of these other automakers who just haven't been up to par with catching up with the different kind of technology advances that Tesla's been implementing in their vehicles. So this is something that, because I don't particularly see this, and I may just have not been looking or just may not be exposed, but I don't see this from the other auto manufacturers. They're relying on BlackBerry to bring this to them. So that's why Ivy is getting so much hype. But again, you're not going to see revenue from this for a long time because this is still being developed. This is what the partnership with Amazon was all about. And the thing too is that these vehicles that are coming out with this smart software, these vehicles are like 2023 timeframe. By the time you see revenue, it's probably mid 2022 at the earliest. So you're really not going to see it affect their earnings reports for another year and a half at the earliest. So again, my point, this is a long horizon stock buy. Secondly, BlackBerry QNX, we went into that, but I just want to touch on, they had wins with 19 of the top 25 electrical vehicle OEMs, who together have 61% of the EV market. That's incredible. They're going to be in basically a majority of the EV market in those cars that are coming out. QNX is, like I said, a stronghold of BlackBerry, and it's something that'll definitely keep bringing them a ton of revenue. Now, this past year, it didn't bring them as much as they had hoped, and they blame a lot of that on COVID, and I don't doubt it, because vehicle sales are down due to COVID. So with less vehicle sales, you have less vehicles out on the market, less vehicles for QNX to profit from, because a lot of the time they realize a lot of their revenue once the vehicles are actually out in the public. So third, BlackBerry unveils the industry's first unified endpoint security solution for AI-powered cybersecurity, BlackBerry CyberSuite. CyberSuite will integrate with all leading UEMs, including Microsoft Intune. So there's a great video on this channel, Gadget Masters video. This person covers a bunch of BlackBerry news. I really like how deep they go into it, so give them some love. I think they definitely deserve a subscription if you're interested in BlackBerry. I'll leave a link in the description along with all the other tabs that I'm going through, just so you can take a look and see if this is something you want to read further into. But they go into basically anything from Ivy to CyberSuite to the Spark Suite. And one of the things that is actually getting very confusing when you try determining whether BlackBerry is something you want to invest in or not is you'll see that they acquired a company called Cylance 2 years ago. And then you see CyberSuite pop up and you see Spark Suite pop up, and their contract with the Air Force to use Spark Suite. And you start wondering, what are all these suites and how do they relate to each other? What do they even do? So this is actually on BlackBerry's website. You have BlackBerry Spark Suite, you have BlackBerry CyberSuite, and you have the BlackBerry Spark UEM Suite. So to break this down as simply as possible, and again, these are all very oversimplified explanations. BlackBerry Spark UEM Suite, we're going to start over here on the right. The UEM suite is basically, you work at a company and they have private information and they want to make sure that that information is managed as best as possible. So maybe, they don't issue you a phone, you have your own phone, but what they do is they hire BlackBerry to have a suite of, let's say, an app. And within that app, there's multiple functions in that app to, check your work email, to who knows, maybe there's Microsoft Teams, some kind of version of Microsoft Teams in there or something like that. But it's basically, you can go into this app for all your work needs. And because it's in this BlackBerry app, it allows your employer to manage how that information is accessed. So instead of having these apps on your phone directly, because you're going through this BlackBerry app, you basically have a layer of control that your employer can still see how all of this is happening, who's using what, when they're using it, and just, it's really more or less about control. But CyberSuite is the protection aspect. So CyberSuite is basically Cylance, that startup company that they acquired 2 years ago, for antivirus protection, and Cylance also uses artificial intelligence, machine learning to basically improve the product every single day, just from all the data that it acquires and it observes on the phones that it's installed on. And I say phones, but this is really any endpoint. And by endpoint, I mean laptops, phones, the Internet of Things. So Alexa, your smart thermostat, a smart lock on your door, whatever it is, it can literally go onto anything just to make sure that absolutely everything that is connected to the CyberSuite is being protected and monitored. Now, there's some really cool stuff about CyberSuite, and we'll get into that in a little bit. However, CyberSuite and the UEM Spark Suite, the way they are separated is that the UEM, the Unified Endpoint Management System, is used to manage how these different features for private information is used. And then the CyberSuite is the Unified Endpoint Security Suite, so UES system. So when you combine the CyberSuite and the Spark UEM suite, you get what is called the BlackBerry Spark Suite. So you get the UEM and the UES. This is what the Air Force signed up for back in September. This is what has been getting a bunch of media coverage now, for some reason, 4 months later, that the Air Force signed up for this. Like 90,000 different employees or devices, I can't quite recall. But the point is that they signed up for this management, endpoint management system in the Spark UEM suite and the security from the Cyber Suite all together, so that basically anybody that works for the Air Force, when they go in to do any kind of work thing on their phone or laptop at home or wherever it is, they are constantly getting, routinely checked, and all the information is protected, and everything is just, I can't explain it as well, what differentiates their security. So I'm going to play a video in a moment, just to kind of give you a little bit more of an idea of what the security really entails and how the UEM works. But that is the explanation for what differentiates CyberSuite from the Spark UEM suite and how it combined becomes the Spark Suite. So that video I'm talking about is actually right here. So it's BlackBerry. It's a video that they threw up on their social media on Facebook, and it's Nigel Thompson, who's the Vice President of Solutions Marketing for BlackBerry. So I'm going to actually skip a little bit into this video because he goes over some things that I believe clarify what all of this, what the Spark Suite is really capable of and what it can do for corporations and for government workers.
I have full connectivity with the office, and even on my little mobile device, I can basically get everything I need to do from communication and collaboration and triage. And what blows my mind is that this little tiny device has more security than the traditional corporate laptop. And what I mean by that is, even though this is a personal device, there is no actual device management on this. There's no pulling personal information off this particular device. all the security is wrapped around the business application itself. And the security is pretty darn sophisticated. So for example, when I tap on this application, this BlackBerry Work application, the first thing it does is obviously it's going to, if it's in a locked state, it's going to do some degree of, biometric authentication. But before it even starts up, it's checking to see, has this device been tampered with? Has this device been, jailbroken or rooted? And then some new technology that's been introduced is it actually checks to see if anything's been sideloaded or if there's any malware on this device. And this is a new capability, and it's a response to the fact that we're seeing a lot more malware attacks targeted at mobile. And then it does other things. It checks, policies and compliance, and it's got all this crazy security with things like, looking for, making sure there's no like keyboard loggers and things like that. And the crazy thing is that I don't notice. It's basically invisible, and it happens in microseconds. And you might ask yourself, well, how did it?
So that is just an explanation for what it's like when you click the app on your phone. In order to get to your work files and start working, that's the kind of stuff it's doing in the background to make sure that this phone hasn't been compromised. Now, skipping a little bit further ahead, there was something else that I wanted to get to.
Past people have, the reason there'd been resistance is some users felt like there was all this friction, like I have to keep authenticating all the time because of my corporate policy. With some of this new technology that BlackBerry's introduced, like continuous authentication, I don't have to do that. It's actually magic. What happens is, as I'm interacting with the application, it's authenticating me every single millisecond, based on how I swipe left and right, how I hold it, probably how it bounces around on the motorbike when I'm off-road. It all creates a profile around who Nigel is. And if for any reason this thing, fell off the motorcycle while I'm out doing stuff, if someone picked it up and it was an unlocked state and they tried to access the business application, it would know that it's not Nigel, and it would, lock them out pretty quick, which is super cool.
So that's really, really, really cool. The fact that you can drop your phone in an unlocked state, somebody else can pick it up, try to get into that work application, and you would realize that it's not the person who owns the phone. That is something that is probably pretty invaluable to large corporations with sensitive information, or for example, the Air Force. So I can see why they would have signed up for something like this. So the last thing I want to touch on is we can see that the price currently for BlackBerry is just under $10. I think it actually broke $10 on this past Friday. I'm filming this actually on January 17th, so that was on January 15th. So it went up 8% in the day. Why is it going up right now if everything that they're doing is something that's been in the works for so long, and there's really no kind of catalyst right now in the near term? Well, a lot of this has to do with they're on a PR tour, if you will. There's a lot of presentations going on. And in these presentations that are going on, I don't necessarily need to name them or anything. You can just Google BlackBerry presentations and you'll see that there's quite a few of them. The executives are deep diving into all these things that I'm talking about, and then some. So I'm really just scratching the surface, but I just want to give you guys a better understanding on what's going on right now. And because there's people on this PR tour and they're talking about it more, the more they talk about it, the more people learn about this. As more people learn about this, they start buying into it, and as they buy into it, the shares go up. There's no real catalyst driving this other than this PR tour. So is it worth this price right now? Well, I think it is. I think it is because when you start pricing companies like any of these other growth companies out there, so let's just throw CrowdStrike out there. I'm not saying that they're not worth what they're currently valued at, but CrowdStrike being trading at roughly 35 times forward, PE multiple, and this trading at I think 4 times, probably a little more now since it's gone up. But those growth companies are valued for what they're perceived to do in the future. BlackBerry hasn't received that kind of attention yet. It's been flying under the radar because their financials have been just steady downtrending. They basically hit the bottom around $6. And now people are starting to realize that this company is actually in a transition and there's a plan. And John Chen, the CEO, has actually been talking about selling patents because they have so many, over 40,000, that they can not only do it just to keep their financials afloat, but they can actually bring in this cash to allow them to push their technology into more emerging markets and allow them to basically compete with all these other companies in a way that they haven't done previously. So there's a lot of different ingredients in this pot right now that are just stirring, and they'll keep stirring for a while. And then eventually what's going to happen is people are going to see that the revenue is going to go up. They're actually going to be profitable. And when that happens, people are going to start buying in. However, going back to my main point, this is not a hyper, blow up 100% in the next month stock. Now, if it does, I won't be sad about it. I'm carrying stocks and calls, so I'd be very happy. However, I don't see that happening as long as people understand what they're investing in. This is a long-term hold. This is a long horizon. I think it's a minimum 2 to 3 year horizon if you're getting into BlackBerry. If you're trying to get a quick buck, I don't think this is a stock for you. But that's all I have today, guys. So hopefully you enjoyed the content. If you do, don't forget to like. If you want more content from this channel, then by all means, please feel free to subscribe. And until next time, guys, see ya.